Welcome to another episode of the On the Water podcast. I'm Jimmy Fee.
And I'm Kevin Blinkoff.
And this week, it's going to be really quick, kind of short and sweet in this introduction segment because we have a really long, informative podcast with Captain Brian Coombs of Get Tight Sport Fishing. He talks with Vinny DeSimone and On the Water's Anthony DeCicci about targeting big striped bass north of Cape Cod. So this week's question is from BFowl372 on Instagram, and that is, what is the best advice for fishing off rocks for striped bass?
Jimmy, I think you've got a lot of experience fishing from rocks. I'm going to start off with my number one piece of advice is footwear. If you're fishing from rocks for striped bass, number one thing you have to do is be safe. There's some certain areas I can think of, like in Rhode Island specifically, where you can get in, the North Shore of Massachusetts. You can put yourself in some danger fishing from rocks when you have breaking waves and swell. So number one, be safe. And then I guess a big part of that is your footwear. At the very minimum, you want felt-soled wading boots. The felt soles will help grip rocks, but really you should have some kind of metal studs, what guys refer to as corkers, corker sandals, or some other type of metal studs drilled into your footwear. Rocks just tend to get very slippery when wet, covered in seaweed, and you don't want to risk breaking an ankle, breaking a leg, or even worse over surf fishing.
No, so to take that further, felt is great on rocks that are already wet and aren't covered in vegetation. Outside of that, it's nearly useless. It's good. I always liked felt more in freshwater situations. Mm-hmm. In the salt, I think you want metal studs, carbide studs. It's an extremely hard metal. It's going to bite into the rocks and cut through any vegetation or slime that's already on those rocks. That is the best option. A distant second would be the aluminum bars, which have been kind of a more recent option over the past, I'm gonna say 5 or 6 years. And they're the opposite of the carbide. Aluminum is a softer metal, so the bar itself kind of conforms and bends, and it's very sticky on bare rocks. But again, in vegetation, that aluminum bar is not going to cut through. Not the best choice, but carbide is kind of a great all-around one. Just don't do what I did and forget something in your kitchen and go through and wreck your new hardwood floor with your corkers on.
Yeah. So. Don't wear metal studs indoors. Definitely not on wood floors. So assuming now you've got the right footwear, you're standing on a rock, you're not going to slip. What about your gear? Anything you do differently rigging for fishing from rocks for striped bass versus fishing from like a sand beach, for example?
So around rocks in general, you're going to want to beef up your tackle a little bit. If you're on a sand beach, you can get away with lighter tackle, lighter leader material, thinner wire hooks, because there's nothing you need to steer a striped bass away from for the most part. You can let that fish run, you can let it tire itself out. In a rocky environment, there's a lot of structure, and striped bass love to swim for that structure. So you want to make sure you have gear that you can put the brakes on a bass. Maybe you're not going to stop it completely, but you will make it change direction over, if it's heading toward a ledge or toward a big pile of rocks. And some good advice somebody gave me once is like, when you get on the rock and the fish is there, don't panic. What you want to do is try to stop that fish. The more that fish runs, like I used to open the bail a lot.
So you're hooked up to a striped bass and it has wrapped your line around a rock, mm-hmm. which if you're fishing, describe, how do you know that? How do you know that that's happened?
You're going to feel a vibration through the line. You can feel that rubbing through your braid. It kind of almost hums. You can hear it. If I'm fishing next to my buddy and a fish gets him on a rock, like I know right away. You start to hear that it's a terrible sound of just that braid being rubbed over the rock. It's transmitted right through the line. And if that happens, at times I would take the line off the roller if using a Van Staal, or open the bail and hope that fish swam out of the structure. But I think for every time I've done that, maybe 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4, maybe less than that it actually worked. Mm-hmm. I've had better luck just trying to stop the fish from running more, because if it runs, the braid's running over that rock. That's how it abrades. If you can stop it, most of these rocks have some measure of bubble weed or grass on them, so it's maybe not contacting the rock directly. So you're best off putting the brakes on it, maybe lifting the rod to try to get the line off the mm-hmm. top of it, and just trying to get the fish to change direction.
I've noticed that too. If you put pressure on a fish like that, a lot of times it will swim back toward, away from the pressure back toward you in the other direction. You run the risk of breaking the line or straightening the hooks, but most of the time that fish will kind of sort of come back and get itself off the rock. Or you can work it toward you. And, you know, when you think about it, when you're surf casting, most of the time that line where it's wrapping around a rock is down close to the fish. That's why you kind of want to go with a longer, say, fluorocarbon leader. If you're fishing at night, maybe 50 pound, 40 pound. Daytime, I'm doing maybe 25, 30 pound. Something. So that fish, hopefully it's just the fluorocarbon leader that's touching the rock. And if you start fighting it and work it back, you can kind of pull it out. If it is the braid rubbing against there, like you said, heavier braid, 50 pound, you're going to last a little longer. Eventually, though, if you do fight it against that rock, eventually it will break through it. And that's just something that happens when you fish in boulder fields and among rocks.
Yeah. One of the coolest instances of somebody successfully getting a fish out of the rocks was my good friend Dave. He hooked a big fish, got him on a rock, and all of a sudden he's putting as much pressure on it as he can, and then the rod just goes slack, and you know he groaned. We thought we lost the fish, and he starts reeling in, and all of a sudden the line comes tight, and the fish is there again, but it's about 15 feet from us. So that fish had basically done a U-turn around the rock, and eventually, just by holding it still, the line worked its way up over the top of the rock. But what happened is that put a lot of slack in the line, made him think he lost it, but that ended up being his biggest fish ever at the time. So it was a really cool way for him to catch it.
And when you do get that fish in, if you do manage to get a fish that wrapped a rock and then land it, I highly recommend checking your braided line, pulling some off, recutting and retying. You don't want to lose the next fish just because you got a weak spot now that's rubbed in your braid.
Exactly. That's great advice for fishing off the rocks for striped bass. Some other ones would be, if I went into lure selection, when you're fishing in rocks, a lot of them, as we said, have that bubble weed, have some grass on them. So if you have a lure that's going too deep, it's going to get fouled in that weed. So I use, whereas if I'm fishing a sand beach, I'm not worried about a lure that's digging along the bottom. In fact, Steve Shareka, a surf caster who passed away several years ago, great writer for On the Water magazine in its early days, he used to say on the sand beaches, he would fish a redfin, and they have it's a plastic minnow plug with a lip on it, and he knew he was fishing it right if the bottom quarter inch of that lip was sanded off, because he knew he was digging it along the bottom. That's something you're not going to be able to really do in a boulder field, just because it's going to get caught in the grass. And sometimes you can pull it free, and if the plug comes out clean, you can get a big hit from a fish that sees it kind of rip free of the weeds. But it doesn't always happen like that. A lot of times it has some weeds all over the hooks. So I'm using lighter jigs that are going to float a little bit, sink a little bit slower, and plugs that are going to get just down to the top of the bubble weed in the rocks, but not dig themselves into it.
And a lot of times bass, on a sand beach like you described, they're looking for fish that are scurrying close to the sand, or crabs, or whatever they're eating is close down to the bottom. In boulder fields, a lot of the times, yes, they're looking around for lobsters, maybe tautog, things like that, but they're also using those rocks as a current break often, and they're looking up. They're feeding toward the surface of the water. So if you're fishing, like, I like to use soft plastics, a minnow plug, or something that's swimming kind of shallow, you want it kind of sweeping over the top of a rock. It's a lot like trout in a trout stream, and that current brings your bait across a rock. The striped bass are waiting in that eddy behind it, and they'll see it. So those types of lures that kind of keep you up, and if you're constantly snagging rocks and breaking off your lures, you're not catching fish. So something that keeps you in the action and keeps that lure presented above the rocks and swings it over into the fish.
All right, Kevin. Well, thank you very much. It was great. And thank you, BFoul372, for the question. And without further ado, here is Captain Brian Coombs, Anthony DiCicci, and Vinny DeSimone talking striped bass fishing in Boston.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Anthony DiCicci with On the Water, and you're listening to the On the Water podcast, brought to you by Guidesley. If you're looking to book a trip with the top guides in the area, download the Guidesley app and let them put you on a memory that will last a lifetime. I have today with me Captain Brian Coombs from Get Tight Sport Fishing and Captain Vinny Simeone from Stormbuster Charters, two accomplished striper fishermen, charter captains. They've been at it for a while and been racking up some impressive catches over the years. So super excited to have these guys in today and looking forward to this one for sure. Brian, how long have you been a charter captain for?
Right around 10 years now, I believe. I think it was 2013. I'm not 100% sure. Everything kind of fogs together now. But yeah, maybe right around 10 years. It's been good. It's been a journey, and I love it. I couldn't go back to a regular job at this point.
Quick ascension for you. You've become synonymous with trophy striped bass fishing, mainly in Boston Harbor, but you will travel early in the season down to the Cape and fish.
Yep, I think I was down here. I just came back to Boston, but I was down here for 2-3 weeks earlier this season. I come back in the fall to do albies.
Yeah.
But I would say, 90% of my business now is just trophy fishing, all catch and release up in Boston area.
Nice. And Vinny, how old were you when you lost your virginity? No. Just kidding. Vinny was all
Not ready for
about
that.
like, hey, what kind of questions do you think he's going to ask? So figured I'd lighten things up a little bit. But Vinny, how long have you been a charter captain for?
I've been about 7 years. Just after Brian. And I started out trailering everywhere. So
Yeah.
I would trailer to the Merrimack River. I would trailer to Rhode Island. I would trailer to the Cape. And now I'm based out of Winthrop with Brian.
Yep.
Full time, staying on the slip, so it's a little easier than trailering because I'm not.
Yeah, trailering's not all that much
it's,
fun.
Go with the fish.
Nerve wracking.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be
it's-
behind a trailer.
It's a lot of work, man, doing the trailer, and especially if you're really cranking out numbers of trips.
Yeah.
It's just very difficult to do the trailering whole thing. It adds an hour on either side at a minimum.
It's a lot worse of a commute when you have a boat behind you. What are you running these days for a boat, Brian?
So I'm running a 26-foot Jones Brothers center console. I had it built back in 2021, custom. I felt the need to have something just a little bit more offshore capable, but really something that was all weather inshore, that it didn't matter the weather conditions, I could still fish that day. Looked at a bunch of different hulls. Actually wrote a great article for you guys that hopefully gets published this year. It was called How to Build a Fishing Boat. I'll throw that little plug in there.
Yeah.
And looked at a bunch of different hulls, bunch of different brands, went out, did my due diligence, got on a bunch of boats, spent the time, and narrowed it down from 10 boats down to 3 boats. Then from there, I even flew down to North Carolina to get on a 26 Jones Brothers because I couldn't find any up here. And was very impressed and had it built. Build process was about a year back then. We powered it with twin Yamaha 200s, and fortunate enough to put some really nice electronics from Humminbird and Minn Kota on it, and here we are today.
Yeah. Talk to me about some of the custom choices that you made to set it up for the fishing that you do.
So bigger live well than the traditional Jones Brothers had. We went with bigger pumps. We went with bigger wash downs just to clean the deck. I wanted something that was triple construction, but open concept. One of the big things I really liked about the Jones was the width. It was a very wide open boat, much more commercial grade than my prior boat. This way we could fish 4 guys extremely you could fish 6 guys on the boat, but I fished 4 guys extremely comfortably. In-floor storage,
Nice.
tons of rod holders. The one thing I wanted to have
Never
was
have enough rod holders.
I'm very OCD, and I like everything where it should be and out of the way. And we made that Christmas tree rod rack on the new boat, and we're able to get everything up on the T-top. This way, when you're fighting a fish and working multiple fish at once, there's nothing in the gunnels. So it was much easier. We actually just one of my good friends, Anthony Forty, just built the same exact boat as me with an even more custom T-top than I had, with even more rod storage, and I'm like super jealous already.
It's nice to be the second man in on something like that, because you get to look at everything that you did and then say, all right, well, here's how I would tweak it a little bit. And
Yep. When we did the build, that's exactly, he was like, what would you do differently? And I was like, I do this. I'd go with more of a larger coffin box in floor up front. And, it came out great, and it's a very impressive riding boat.
Yeah.
It's very heavy, very comfortable.
Nice.
You know, like I said, yeah, I can go out in any condition now and be comfortable, because I mean, I had a great boat before, but I just put in a very large amount of hours on the boat, and my body was just getting beat up.
Yeah.
You know, you're running between 150 and 170 trips a year. I mean, on my high, when I was doing real like 4-hour trips, I did one year, I did like just over 200 trips in a year. And it definitely takes a toll. And I'm not the smallest guy in the world. So, you know, by the end of the season, I'm like crippled.
What do you have? How do you have your electronics set up? You have a trolling motor, right?
Yeah, I have a trolling motor. I use a Minn Kota trolling motor with spot lock. I have a link system on it, so it integrates with my Hummingbird electronics. The new boat actually has a really nice through hull transducer. Hummingbird does now. The imaging's excellent, even much better than the one I had on my prior boat. And I've been happy. Twin screens. You know, I went as big as I could fit into my dash, basically, when I did the build. I really like the quality of the through hull. There's a noticeable difference from the stock transducer to the through hull now with the imaging, as far as like clarity and
a lot cleaner with the through
cleaner
hulls
and returns and stuff like that. And I mean, running at 30 miles an hour, you know, and being able to mark fish is
that's a benefit.
It's definitely a benefit, because like you can cover water quickly, and just, I mean, the return might not be crystal clear running at that speed, but you know you ran over something, you just throttle back, and all of a sudden the return comes back clearer, and you're like, okay, there's fish here, you know, and
it's amazing how far electronics have progressed in such a short amount of time.
10 years. I had the very, very first side imaging stuff when it.
I like that song. No worries.
The very first side imaging stuff when it first came out.
Yeah.
And I mean, it wasn't great. I mean, you could see structure with it, and you might be able to see like bait balls, like pogies, and that's really what I used to use it for. You couldn't really see fish that well on it, like that very first generation stuff. And now, I mean, you could see the direction of the fish, the head, tail. You know, we're basically sight fishing with electronics a lot of times, being able to lead a fish. And it's very impressive. You know,
it makes a world of difference to be able to set up on a school, know which way they're traveling, what they're doing. It's almost cheating. Now, Vinny, you fish a dusky, right?
I do. Yep, 23.3 offshore, so it's
nice.
26. Yeah, you know, it's very comfortable. It fits people up front very, very comfortable. I do 4 people. I've done 6 before.
Yep.
And it's, you know, you got 6 rods going. It's kind of sketchy, but if it's schoolies, we can hammer them, you know. But I do like the boat. It's an offshore. It's got a nice flare on the front. Very dry. My live well's on the floor, which isn't terrible. Leaves me more room, plenty of storage.
Nice.
You know, there's a platform up front that people can get up and can fly cast off and stuff like that. But I do like the boat a lot.
So you joke around and dubbed yourself Mini Coombs. You fish.
I'm Brian Coombs Light.
Yeah, Brian. Yeah, exactly, Brian Coombs Light. You fish very similar. You guys work together. You know, a network is super important when you're on the water.
We do.
We work.
We split up and we find the fish.
Yeah, and we've been very fortunate to even bring a couple other guides into the network now, and it's really worked out incredibly well having the network that we have up in the area, and just being able to keep on the fish on daily. Yeah, you know, especially when patterns are changing and evolving so fast and so rapidly. As far as fishing the same, I think me and Vinny are very different in the way that we fish, but we typically run a similar program overall, you know.
Yeah, well, he has my electronics are Simrads.
Yeah.
And I have 2 12-inch screens, and it's a similar. I mean, I like Simrads. I like Simrads. But you know, we set up our gear differently. I use different reels and rods, and you know, but we both do the same thing, and I have to keep up with him sometimes because he gets me a trip here and there, and I got to produce. You know what I mean? So it's like, here we go. Not just bent rods. We got to get the big fish. All right.
So you guys have been on a consistent big fish, trophy fish bite. I mean, I sent a buddy with you, I want to say maybe a year or two ago, and you know, he's fished with me growing up. He's caught some big fish, you know, in the upper 30s and such. Nothing huge, but I sent him with you, and as soon as he got back to the dock, it was like my phone was blowing up. He's like, I got my PB not once, 3 times, and everybody else on the boat did it. And you know, they had fish well into the 40s. So you guys have made a name for yourself targeting big fish. Is there anything that you've found that, you know, kind of that light bulb went off and said, all right, this is how to put trophy class striped bass to the boat, get them to the boat on a consistent basis?
So, just like anything you're doing, if you're going to be successful about anything in life, it's really about putting in the time and effort and really being consistent with stuff. So just being able to go out every day and focus on that one thing. Like typically when I leave the dock now and it's trophy season, I'm not bringing schoolie gear on the boat. I'm solely focused on that larger fish, you know, running setups that are capable of landing those fish. I'm bypassing the small surface feeds. I'm focusing on areas with big bait, you know, and just staying on these larger fish patterns and just not getting distracted by everything else. Like a horse with his blinders on. I'm trying to do one very specific thing, typically, and we've been very fortunate up in our area to have, for a long time, you know, even prior to me guiding, we've had a good sized class of fish up there, you know, and again, if you're willing to put in the time and effort and really go above and beyond. I mean, I sometimes I think we were talking about this coming down. I'm like obsessive with stuff, and I get very ramped up over big fish, man. I still get excited. I get very excited about it. And
the details matter. It's the little things that make such a big difference.
It really does, man.
So you kind of hinted at, you know, big bait being a key factor in, you know, allowing the opportunity to hold and attract big fish. What are the baits that you mainly key in on, and how do you go about kind of patterning the bait to locate those bigger schools of jumbos?
So for me, you know, big fish, everything that they do is about sustaining their body mass. So they have to feed so many times a day to be able to sustain their body mass. They also don't typically, especially the very large fish, don't move around a ton. So 2 things that you got to look for. You got to look for not only big bait, but a high concentration of big bait. Okay. So the highest concentrations are possible. Your sea herring blooms, your pogies. This time of year early, your bluebacks coming out and like deeper in Boston Harbor. You know, your larger mackerel. Mm-hmm. And you also have to understand how these fish digest too. So they have to, they're on a feeding schedule, but they're also on a digesting schedule. And if you can figure out where these fish are setting up, even digesting, they're just so opportunistic that, you know, you just got to find them and be able to present the bait a certain way. I mean,
Find the staging areas.
Yeah, find the staging areas.
Why are they even here? They must be sleeping. They're digesting.
Yeah,
why are they in 4 feet of water?
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny you guys bring that up. We in one of the earlier episodes, that was kind of the lead into the actual podcast segment where Jimmy and Kevin were talking about seeing big fish in areas that didn't really make sense that they were there, and they were very kind of like finicky. And what it took to get those fish to bite, and you know, if you could speak to that a little bit from what your experience is when you know they're digesting, they're not actively feeding. What makes the difference in getting those fish to bite?
So oftentimes, especially earlier in the year, they're using warmer water to speed up their digestive process. And a lot of times, especially when you find them in the middle of the day like that, they're almost catatonic. They're super skittish. So often, and they're not feeding. So oftentimes, I'll start off with some artificials, which generally don't work in that kind of scenario. But I'm one of these guys. I try everything across the spectrum a lot of times to kind of see what's working.
Process of elimination.
Exactly. And a lot of times, what it really comes down to is either a reaction strike from a real frisky bait when they're like that, or a dead bait.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's extremes.
Whole dead bait.
Yeah.
Like
scattered across the surface.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a reaction.
Popper
thing.
mackerel.
Yeah. Mackerel popper.
And then
don't let the mackerel popper out.
Yeah. And then it's also that, getting multiple fish interested, or at least showing it, and then that competition gene kind of kicks in, and that will a lot of times trigger a bite. But in a lot of cases, it's the smaller fish that can get to the bait faster that says, I'm not going to lose this race.
Well, I find, especially with the big fish stay with big fish.
Yeah.
I mean, for what we're finding up in the area, when I come across these fish that are in that digesting pattern, we're not looking at a mixed bag of fish. We're typically looking at anywhere from 300 to 4,000 big fish.
Wow.
And they're staging in an area, and you basically have your pick at that point. They're all going to be within that same size class. Especially the last couple of years, there hasn't been a mix. There's been, pockets of different size classes in different areas. And if you can get dialed in enough, it's
that's wild. I mean, the numbers of fish that do that digestive, staging thing is for me, it puts it in perspective of why you've been able to kind of crack the code and get so many big fish to the boat over a sustained, several years. That seems like a big piece of the puzzle that you've been able to put into place.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
I mean, I was talking with someone over the winter time, and very, very, very accomplished angler, and he's a surf guy, mainly fishes at night, and he's touting, big tides, and he's touting all these things, and he gave this seminar. And my seminar was like the complete opposite seminar from him. They're targeting certain windows of opportunistic feeding, as where I'm basically. I mean, these things don't turn into pumpkins.
Yeah,
they're here. They're not going anywhere. You just have to change the pattern slightly to kind of figure out what they want and where they are as they're kind of moving around in an area. And they're taking the same pattern almost daily too. So,
and it blows your mind when they want the deads and not the lives.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, I think we got our first big fish of the year the other day on a dead.
Yeah.
And it was actually a deep water dead, but
Vinny, how do you present a dead bait?
We hook them up and up through the bottom, up through the mouth.
Yeah.
Keep the mouth closed and just let it out and give it a little jerk here and there and make it look alive. It's that initial. They look at it and they're like, oh, okay, that's a fish. And then when it starts to jerk, that fast jerk, like I got to get that. Just like any. I mean, the stripers are like largemouth bass.
Yeah.
They're just giant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I find with dead baits, like, especially with a dead pogie will act completely different in the water than a mackerel. Mackerel sink, pogies float just because the amount of oxygen that are in the pogie's gills. So typically, if I'm going to fish a dead pogie, I like to fish them on like on a weight, just about 3 feet ahead of them. And again, you definitely want to pin the mouth shut. No matter what dead bait you have to pin their mouth shut.
Yeah, and you use the hook for that.
Yeah, through the lower, and then just through the top of the.
And now is that
so
an egg sinker?
I actually you can bridle their faces closed too, and that's actually the best way to fish it. If you take the extra couple minutes to do it, just because now with the circle hooks,
Yeah,
you want
the
you
mouth
want
is
more
still open on the hook.
You want more hook exposed as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense.
With mackerel are great because mackerel will sink like a stone.
Yeah.
And
they sink in kind of a natural way too.
Yeah, but in both, you have to break their backs once they're dead.
Yeah.
And as you work them too, over the course of 15 minutes or so, you definitely have to break their back again and really make sure they're flexible.
Yeah, they get very stiff quick. That's a good point. That's interesting stuff. The On the Water podcast is brought to you by Guidesley. Are you looking to book a fishing trip with a renowned hand-selected expert in the field? Guidesley has the best guides in the best destinations. Whether you've never fished before or you're a regular on the water, let Guidesley hook you up with the best captains in your area. They'll put you on the best catches of your life. You can search and book your dream trip now on Guidesley.com or download their app, Guidesley Fishing Trips. Book a Guidesley trip today and create memories that will last a lifetime. Let's play a little game. I want to get you guys, kind of breaking down. Like, let's just say that you one day you woke up, you fell out of the sky, and you're in a place that you've never seen before, surrounded by water. You have the boat that you have. How are you going to attack? Figuring out something totally foreign to you. What process do you go through in your mind when you're starting to try to figure out completely foreign water for the first time?
So, for me, I rely heavily on the electronics again, and like anything, fish. No matter what fish you're really targeting, they're gonna take a pattern, some sort of pattern. Of something that may be similar. I got into a pattern a couple of years ago with a digestive pattern that was going on kind of in the afternoons, late afternoon type of thing. And I found some fish in an area day in, again, over and over and over again. And I said, I looked at the conditions. I looked at the depth. I looked at the sky conditions, and I looked at what kind of bottom they were on in relation to the shoreline. And I was able to take that pattern from there, and I looked at where could I find the same conditions with the same water depth, with the same bottom, with the same shoreline. And I wound up now isolating like 5 different locations that all have the same pattern. That now I can go in my afternoon trips and just go and find these fish.
So when you were able to identify 5 like situations, scenarios, if you will, did all of them hold fish?
Not all the time, but they do.
Yeah.
So it's just it's something now I'm able to go into an area and look for what I got to look for, and
scan it and be like, all right, they're here or they're not.
Scan it. So I use I don't know if you're ever familiar with the military terms, SILS. It's stop, look, listen, smell, something to that effect. So visually, the first thing I do is usually get into an area and I'm looking for signs of life. Whether it be birds, whether it be bait that I can see, whether, especially during the day in higher sun, tailing fish. Yeah. Because a lot of times these fish are closer to the surface doing their digestive stuff. The other thing that I do, especially in low light conditions or even fog, is listen, because like all these sounds are going to be heightened in fog and at nighttime. You can definitely hear things so much better. And then the big thing, when you find these larger schools of fish, I can smell them.
Yeah.
I can smell them.
My old man used to like literally walk in from the backyard and be like, "You smell that?
Yeah.
Stripers. There's stripers nearby, or bluefish too. They have a different smell. You can differentiate.
So I can get into an area, I get all happy. Recently we've had a lot of seals up in the area, and I know if I call him the Terminator. Yeah. I know if the Terminator's there, that there's fish there, because he ain't there for any other reason but
nature
to
gives
eat
constant
those things.
clues.
So,
cucumbers. You used to say they smell cucumbers as fish.
Just stop for a second and then just take everything in. Because again, it's the electronics help.
Yeah.
They'll do the 50%, but then the other 50%, you have to do.
Well, you got to know the fish. You got to know what they're doing.
So Vinny, same concept. Is it any different for you how you go about that? If you were to just stumble into a completely new body of water?
Well, I'd be looking for the structure and the currents and stuff like that. Something that holds the fish.
What kind of structures do you kind of key in on?
I bounce off rocks quite a bit. I keep a prop and a stretch and a shaft.
I remember the first day we came to Boston Harbor when you guys came up, and we were fishing that boulder field. And up by Castle, and
whoops,
he was like, you're getting really shallow in there. I'm like, you gotta get as shallow as you can.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not bumping rocks,
if you're not rubbing, you're not striking fish.
Right. People go, "What was that?" I go, "This is a rock." We'll hit it with the front. As long as you don't hear a metallic dang, we're okay.
Yeah.
I like to get in tight to the rocks, unfortunately, but that's where they are.
1 foot of 100.
Yeah.
So. We've kind of talked a lot about, staging fish in shallow water, but, it seems to be something that has been kind of unique to your program, where you'll go hunting and you call them pelagic stripers that you've kind of dialed in a bite in deep water, almost in the middle of nowhere. And personally, I've stumbled across that. A lot of times I'd be out tuna fishing or something like that, and there was just a massive school of 40, 50-pound monster stripers that I'd drop a cod jig down or something like that and look to try to catch a cod for the grill or something back when you could keep them while we were tuna fishing, and I'd reel it up, and all of a sudden the mother load of stripers come up, and I'd run, change it out, and next thing you know, there's a 42-pound striper on the deck, and I'm like, why is he out here or she out here? Like
the bait.
Yeah.
Bigger, not only is it the bigger bait that you're looking for, but the concentration of it. And that's really where, again, people, I've talked to people about, they're like, what form of structure do you like the most? I said, but the bait. The bait is the structure. Again, once they're to that size, they have to eat so much a day to sustain their body mass. So until you can kind of realize, I would say probably a 38 to 45-inch fish probably survives mostly off of pogies, off of mackerel, off of sea herring. When they get above that 45-inch size, they're usually on pogies, and they're usually on crustaceans at that point. That's the other thing that a lot of guys don't take into account, that these things eat lobsters and crabs all day.
Yeah.
They're behind every commercial lobster boat, cleaning up the scraps.
Yep.
They stage on commercial lobster pot long lines because the lobsters are there.
Yeah, and they know that they know that
the
they're going
to come and
be in
throw
for an easy meal.
They're going to chuck the culls over the side,
yeah.
And when you can start concentrating on those areas that these bigger fish and how they work. When you know how these fish tick, then you can kind of really adapt your program around it.
Cheat codes with Brian Coombs. I love it. That's actually a really good point, because, growing up in Hull, surrounded by water, it's peninsula, part of Boston Harbor, right across from Boston Light. My old man was a big striper guy, and he had a lot of lobsterman buddies. And I swear that, just in the small talk when he's getting his lobster delivery for the weekend, it was always like, hey, where are you seeing big fish behind the boat? And that would be where we'd go and jig wire. And, probably a lot of times cheated to find out where the fish were staging, because we only had small windows to get out and fish a lot of times with all the sports and everything. So that's, anytime you can make a lobsterman your buddy, or a commercial guy or a dragger, or any of those guys that are watermen out there every day, the amount of information that you can get from them is invaluable, and pay it forward. Like, there's stuff that you can toss them to, grease the wheels a little bit, but those guys can help you out tremendously.
Yeah, when you're in the water every day, it's big help.
It makes a big difference when before I was guiding, I was still on the water a lot, but I was probably on the water 3-4 days a week before I was guiding. Then I started guiding, and the busier I got, the better I got at patenting. And just it is what it is. You get to learn your office.
Yeah.
You know,
Of course.
And you get very intimate with it as far as everything. And like you said, I mean, I talk to everybody. Yesterday I was talking to commercial pogey guys. You know, I talk to commercial guys. I talk to other charter captains. I talk to recreational anglers. A lot too. I mean, I run the whole gambit, you know, and try to get as much information as possible and filter out what you think is full of shit. And then keep all that. Keep the rest.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've sent some other guys with you that, you know, they fished with you. They've had banner days out fishing with you, but they remain in touch with you on a regular basis. And, you know, now they're often fishing their own boats and having a ton of success. And, you know, you're willing to like kind of invite them into your network as long as it remains done right in a two-way street. And that's huge. You know?
I mean, definitely I'm very into the two-way street thing. Yeah. You know, I don't mind helping someone as long as I'm getting something back. Of course. And one hand washes the other, you know. Well,
you can give them all the information you want. They still got to catch the fish.
That's true. Exactly. I see so many guys that come into an area and they could be right beside me and they're not. They're struggling. Yeah. And again, it's a lot of times it's the little things.
What are the biggest things that kind of, you know, for that guy out there that wants to, you know, catch his, you know, first slot or his first trophy? What are the little things that are holding that guy back?
So one thing, like I don't skimp on anything. So from start to finish, how I run the whole operation. If it's a big fish setup, it's set up for big fish. I purchased that specific setup with, you know, the rod rated for the size line class, for the size, you know, lure or baits I'm going to be using. You know,
that's where
so first off,
come in handy because you can have
first off, you know, good product. Yeah. I change my leaders daily. Mm-hmm. I don't skimp on leader material. I buy leader material by the case at the beginning of the season. Fluorocarbon. At the beginning of the season. If I see a hook that's rusted, I get rid of a rusty hook. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, when you're targeting the apex of any species, right? It's gonna pick apart the weak points in your equipment. Yeah, exactly. And then just try to learn from your mistakes. Like I've done everything wrong. I learn from my mistakes and kind of move forward. Yeah. You know, you always lose a fish here and there, but you know, that's fishing. But well, why do we lose that fish? What could we have done differently? I do a great talk with people all the time when I do seminars, and I always include what I call the end game. Yeah. Okay, now you've hooked the fish. I can give you all the knowledge you want, but once you've hooked that fish, you still got to land them. Right? Yeah. You still got to land them. So like the first thing I'm doing is like, I'm looking around at the whole situation. Are there anything in the area that we can get hung up on? Lobster pots, boulders. What, you know, if we're on a flat, are we towards the edge of a flat where he can get into deeper water? How much drag do we have on the fish? You got to kind of assess the situation. Then stay as organized as possible on the boat. You know,
an organized boat's a happy boat.
An organized boat's a happy boat. I know where everything is. I communicate clearly to the customers. I don't scream. I talk just like how I'm talking to you. You know, anytime people get happy and animated, a lot of times, what winds up happening is tempers flare, and then communication breaks down. Especially when you're on a big fish, that can not be good. And up front, I tell people where everything is on the boat. The gaff's over here if we're tuna fishing. The harpoon's here. Yep. You know, when we're bass fishing, I keep right on my seat. I have lip grippers, pliers, and a Baker brand. I don't know if you ever seen the long stainless steel dehookers. Yeah. Just in case we gut hook a fish, they're already ready. And right beside that is my phone already on camera. As soon as we hook that fish, everything is out and ready.
Nice.
Boom, it's ready to go. This way, as I'm handling the fish and getting it in the boat, I can ask the customer if I need something.
Yeah.
And it's right there.
Yeah, and they know where it is already. Now you're
He's way more organized than me.
Yeah,
I'm just like,
me too.
I'm just like, don't touch the net. I tell people, don't touch the net.
That was what I was
touch
gonna
the
ask.
net.
You net your fish?
Yeah.
Do you net your
Yes,
fish?
I net every fish.
Nice.
You know, for me, you know, I try to handle them as little as possible from the jaw structure, especially with the bigger fish, because you're just doing so much damage.
I just tell everybody, look, get the cameras ready. I don't have time to take pictures. I'm letting it go.
Yeah.
So get your cameras ready.
You know, a lot of people made a lot of comments in the time we did the shoot in Boston Harbor, because I had my hands near the fish's gills.
Yeah.
You can grab them by the gill plate.
Yeah.
You don't have to grab them by the gills.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when you're handling a bigger fish, if you grab them by the face, they thrash. But if you grab them by what is their neck,
Yeah.
which is the gill plate, right? They don't thrash. The biggest threat to killing a big fish is when someone drops them on the deck.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of times I grab the fish, I secure the fish, I hand them to the customer. I say, this is how I want you to hold them. Okay?
Support 'em
'Cause
underneath.
Support them under the belly, but you secure them by the head, you know? Because if he drops on the deck, he's dead.
Yeah.
That's what those grippers are good for. Hand the gripper
The grip
person, they can
the
hold
grippers are good, but it still puts in my
hang 'em.
opinion,
You can't hang 'em.
you can't hang them.
No.
How do you guys care for the fish after it's been caught and it's time to release that fish? What's your process, Vinny, on you know, making sure that fish is released you know, at a point where it has the highest chance of you know.
Well, I put the boat in gear. I get him in the water, and I'm dragging him as much as I can. I'm looking for the colors to change. I'm looking for that kick. You know, you're holding them by the mouth, and you're going slow, and then you wait for the colors to come back, and then they usually that initial kick, they want to go. And I've had some fish that I couldn't bring back. You know, when you fish Block Island, you're bringing them up from the deep.
Yeah.
And they don't go back great. I've spent half hour letting fish go at the best fishing time ever.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get that fish back in. You know what I mean? So I just make sure it's aired out well. And I tell people, look, we don't have time for pictures. We're going to get a picture and we'll get them right back in the water. And that's, you know, I try everything I can do to keep them, get back to life.
Yeah. Is your process similar?
Yes, but like one of the big things I can say, the bigger fish you're targeting, you're not going to get a clean release unless you limit the fight time. So you really got to make sure, again, the gear that you're using is able to get them in. And I fish very heavy drags, like very. When I fished with Chris, he was very surprised at how heavy the drags were that day, you know, very stout hooks. And that's why I'm always checking my leader and checking my knots, because at that point, it's just a recipe for failure. But again, if you can get the fish in a timely manner, his release mortality is going to be much lower the faster you get him in. So I think that really plays a key role. And then again, after that, it really comes down to water temperature too.
Yeah.
You know, if it's real warm out, you got to spend more time with them, venting them, you know, and then the amount of time out of the water.
And by venting, you just mean like, you know, boat and gear.
Getting oxygen over their
Let
gills.
the water travel over their gills and spend that time.
Exactly. And the amount of time spent out of the water, I mean, how I tell people all the time, picture, I mean, if you've ever been in a fist fight before, you know how exhausting a fist fight is, or any kind of fight.
That window gets shorter and shorter with every year.
Yeah. So, you know, you're completely exhausted. You're fighting for your life at that point. And then picture if someone throws a plastic bag over your head. That's basically what you're doing to the striped bass.
Yeah.
He's fought
Gasping.
hot as he could for his life, and then all of a sudden you just cut his oxygen off. So that window of when the oxygen is cut off, if you can narrow that window down and have your phone camera ready and limit the time you have him out of the water by using single hooks that come out of him fast, and handle them quickly and get them in. That is the most crucial thing you can do to actually get that fish revived. It's the amount of oxygen time that he's depleted at that point.
Yeah, it doesn't get any more simplistic than that. Now, you mentioned single hooks. Have you gone to using inlines on your plugs? You guys do a lot of artificial fishing.
I find inlines work great. I use a lot of single hook soft plastics. We're using circle hooks now.
Circle hooks on the bait.
On the live baits.
Yeah.
Inlines I find, especially on like docks, work much better in deeper water, you know, for that like pelagic bite where they can come up and kind of, you know, white shock submarine the plug.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't work as great in shallower water. So I've been playing around with, you know, actually going back to some trebles, but crimping down the bobs.
Yeah.
On some of the shallow water stuff. Again, I'm doing one treble in one inline on the
Where do you keep the treble on the belly and the inline on the tail, or?
Yep, exactly. And it's all tuna grade stuff.
Yeah.
I'm using all BKK stuff right now.
Nice. So why this obsession with striped bass? I mean, there's a lot of different fish you can target, but that's your niche. That's what you've hung your hat on. Both these,
that's
really.
what we got. I mean, I lived in Florida, and it was everything. You could catch anything.
Yeah.
And I hated striped bass, but but that's all we got, really.
And I hate tuna.
Tuna.
I hate tuna.
Yeah.
I hate tuna. Love albies, but hate tuna.
Tuna can be so maddening.
Yeah, it's maddening, and I don't know. I just it was weird because as a kid we didn't have a ton of striped bass. I mean, bluefish were like what we had up in Boston.
Yep.
When everything crashed. But I'm like obsessed with striped bass.
Yeah.
That's what makes me tick. That's my jam.
Yeah.
You know.
Definitely an amazing fish. The way
it is. It's a beautiful fish. It's
and every year it's different.
They can live
like
in
this year, we
fresh
got a lot
water,
of-
salt water.
They can go in the
you
fresh,
know,
yeah.
You could find them in, like you said, 100 feet of water, 150 feet of water. You could find them in 1 foot of water, tailing. You know, we hooked a fish the other day, and I almost grounded the boat. I was feeling the trolling motor rub bottom, and we spot locked, and there was 5 fish tailing, and we presented, we made a presentation to him, and he made the eat, man, and he was a big fish, and it was, that was just
It's that shallow, the tail's out of the water. His face is
everything's out
buried.
of the water. He's thrashing around because he's in no water. And to me, that's my jam.
Yeah. It doesn't get much better
Doesn't
than
get
that.
much better than that.
And so you, how long were you down in Florida for?
I used to go down there for 3 months at a time.
Yeah.
And spend the time down there sail fishing. And
Yep.
Snapper, offshore, grouper, and all that. So that's kind of where I liked it a lot. I wanted to stay there.
Mhm.
I never made the move.
Yeah.
You know? But it's definitely a different world.
Yeah, Florida's kind of. I love fishing in Florida, but it's kind of a weird dynamic where it's like it's almost hard to target what you want to catch because there's so much,
many things.
especially if you're doing the reef fishing type thing. It's like you never know what's going to come, or if you're chumming live bait behind the boat, you never know what's going to come. But one similarity to their species that I've always said is very familiar is the snook. The snook and the striped bass. Snook are awesome. And we've had this debate with plenty of people, snook fishermen, whatever. Like, would you trade snook for stripers and vice versa? And all the Jimmy Fees of the world, all the striper guys are like, I can't do it. I can't do it. Snook are awesome. They might have one more thing in their bag of tricks because of the awesome leaps that they give you when they're fighting. And it's very similar to a striper fight, except for that jump. Stripers aren't going to leap out of the water like a
Those
snook
things
will.
come out, their mouth is open, they're
Yeah,
doing
cool
this.
fish.
Yeah. And in Florida, you can find snook, tarpon, largemouth in the same spot.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's just crazy.
Yeah. So Vinny, you actually got hooked up with Guidesley. How did you find Guidesley? And talk to me about that experience as being a Guidesley captain.
Well, they contacted me,
Yeah.
and it sounded like a good program, so
Yeah.
I went along with them, and I listened to what they had to say, and they set me up with a really nice website, and they got all my stuff going, all my rate cards and stuff, and I really liked the people. I took them out on my boat. They came to Boston, and I took them all out, and they're all hardcore fishermen. So I've been sticking with them, and they seems like a really good program.
Yeah. The thing that I found really interesting about their program is it really seemed like it was built for the charter captain's benefit. Obviously, there's the end user side of things, pairing, customers with vetted captains that are gonna, put them on fish. But the way that the founder explained it to me, which I thought was really cool, is like, we do everything that the charter captain hates doing.
Exactly.
It's the, managing your schedule, managing the money side of things, the SEO, the back end. It's a company that's born with big tech.
I mean, after he got set up on there, and especially looking at it from a very well-established charter cap, what I consider myself, it's definitely by far the best program, to support the charter captain for what for what you would get out of it.
Yeah.
It's a great program.
They offer a lot.
Yeah. I found that really cool that it was set up with that being like, if we're successful, the charter captains are going to win with this program. And when I thought it was just basically a booking,
it's not
way
just
more than that.
Way more than just
they came out to see what I had to offer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that when somebody says, "Hey, how about Stormbuster?" Like, "Oh yeah, we fished with him. This guy's legit. He's good. He's got the right gear and stuff." So it's proven.
Yeah. There's so many guides out there that are phenomenal at catching fish. They're bad at marketing. They're bad at running a business, but they're, super talented when it comes to putting people on fish. But there's not as many people to put on fish when you don't do those other business type things well. And that's where they kind of can come in and help out tremendously, to kind of, get the business side of things going on autopilot, really. Yeah. And then you just have to worry about,
because,
the fishing, what you're good at.
Let's face it, as a guide, I mean, my biggest thing is that there's just not enough hours in the day to accomplish to accomplish the fishing, talking to the customers, setting up your bookings for later in the week, doing your banking, your
SEO management,
SEO management,
your
keywords,
website, your digital stuff, your social. It's a lot.
Everything.
Yeah.
All your marketing.
Yeah.
And then just interacting with people and having to do that. I mean, just having to go out and fish is great, but there's definitely so much more into it, and they seem to be kind of streamlining everything.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a company that's rich in technology, and that's usually something that's foreign to a lot of the guys that are, getting into charter fishing, which I found really cool and unique. And I was super excited to have you guys both on here, knowing that you've had that experience with them, and they've been, the partner that's allowed us to bring this podcast out, which is awesome. So I keep getting enamored with this pelagic striper, niche or code that you figured out. Like, do you think these fish are built different than the inshore fish? Are they the same? Are they moving back and forth?
I think so. So I think when we had that,
once they get that size, they just become a different.
So I think once they hit like I said, like that mid to high 40-inch range, then they become a different animal. Then they become like more of that inshore fish at that point. I think inshore fish or more of that offshore pelagic fish? I think no matter where they are, once they hit a certain size, they have to live a certain way. So I think even if they are an offshore fish, they'll graduate to more inshore structure. When the bait's there. When the bait's there.
Yeah.
Obviously different areas have different genetics. Like when you talk about the genetics in Long Island Sound of these trophy class fish getting so big, you have the right conditions for those fish to get that big, basically. But
There's nothing like hunting those fish in the deep water.
I think we have two different sets of population up in Boston. We definitely have the fish that move laterally from Stellwagen Bank with the bait into those inshore waters and back and forth, and they're shifting with the bait laterally back and forth. Then what we know, we have residential fish, and we know this from the tagging study data.
Yeah, we pull overs. You can catch a striper 12 months out of the year in Boston Harbor.
Yeah, and then you have these fish that are moving north to south, kind of across, North Shore in Boston, like back and forth as well. So you have two different. What we saw in the year 2000, was the intermingling of both of these when the right conditions, really, with all that topwater stuff, for 2019 and really 2000. We had a very unique thing that happened. All the restrictions on the pogies down south,
we didn't have pogies.
No, we did in 2019.
Early 2000s. It was.
Well, no, I know that, but I'm just talking about the last 2 years when that topwater bite was really nuts and at its height. And so what you did was we've always had that topwater bite occur when the bioeffluence from an east wind pushes the herring plumes in the bunker that are out on the bank out from the east into that mid-water column zone just outside the harbor. We always kind of get that for a couple of days here, a couple of days there, but it's always weather dependent. That pattern with those fish is weather dependent. It's always after an east is when we see that. What we saw this year in 2019 and the year 2000 was.
How do you go from 2019 to 2000?
2020, sorry. 2019 and 2020. Okay. So for that period of 2 years. Okay, thank you for correcting.
Details matter.
All right.
Come on.
So for the period of 2 years there, you had huge influxes of bunker coming up to the area. And rather than settling in the inner harbor, we had a large dredging operation up in the North Channel. And we all know pogies are filter feeders.
Yep.
Right? Well, it's very
dirty water.
They love dirty water. And you had all these giant cranes sitting out in the North Channel, right? Like in outer Boston up in the shipping lane, just stirring up silt and just acres and acres and acres of bait staying in that mid-water column.
I actually had it backwards. They love that dirty water.
And they're filtering everything.
Yeah.
And so because these fish now staged, 2 miles further out than they would normally stage inside the harbor, inside the anchorage and downtown with the pogies, every tide swing, every outgoing tide, those fish flushed out into the what I call the killing
land,
the killing fields at that point.
Killing fields.
I
like that.
And
they were easy marks.
They were very easy marks to these big schools.
Yeah, I mean,
of fish.
A lot of times you had, when I grew up and was focused on pogies, it was all in Wollaston Beach. The fish were, in the North River, all back in these bays.
Yeah.
Very few times were there actually fish on them. So it became one of those things. It's like, all right, well, you get your pogies and you take them to where the fish were. And I always found it odd that it didn't seem like there was big stripers kind of staying with those schools when they were in the back bays. Why is that?
So especially when you have bass on pogies, because it's sort of like when bass are on crustaceans, they can only eat so much before they become sated, and they need to digest. So you have when you have these large plumes of bait like that, you have feeding pockets, feeding windows.
Yeah.
Okay. That most likely the fish are there.
They're just not eating.
They're just you're because of your time restraints. You weren't there at the time when they weren't eating.
That makes sense,
right? And I mean, I'm catching big fish way upriver some days where you would never even think they are.
Yeah.
Because the pogies have gone up that deep.
Yep.
Like super urban, and
at the end of
the
water.
But they may only have a 3-hour feeding window in a 2-hour, 3-hour feeding
that could
window
be middle of the night or something like that.
Yeah,
and then they're just doing that digestion thing, and you don't know they're there.
Exactly,
that makes sense.
But having the electronics to validate that they're there
didn't have that back then.
You didn't have that.
No.
I mean, I have some really cool shots from yesterday and the day before because we have a pretty cool bunker bite going on like right now. They're mostly slot fish.
Yeah.
But you could see the shoals of bunker, and then right on the edges, you can see them like lions herding them. You can see all the bass on the side imaging. And being able to have that technology to be able to just, especially in like when there's a lot of bunker and there may not be a lot of bass, being able to go through the fields of pogies and find the right school.
Got it.
So many people stay at one school figuring it's going to be big fish.
It's going to happen.
Some guy said
Sometimes
something to me a few years back. He's like, "Oh, Brian trolls around the schools at bunker." I'm like, "I don't troll around the schools at bunker. I'm running my side imaging around the school. Right? I do a loop around each school. If there's no fish there, I move on to the next one.
One of the most exciting times of the year for me when there were pogies present was that fall. When the pogies would be holed up in their haunts in the backwaters, there was that month period where everything would start to flush out. I used to call it the March of the Pogie Schools, and all you saw was just purple water moving out through Westcott, out through Hull Gut, and going down the beach, and it would just continue on south, and they just swam in circles. And it would just be a melee of big fish on them. Middle of the day, morning, first light, didn't matter. And they're moving south. The stripers are fattening up for, either being a resident for the winter or moving south with them. And it was like insane. And then when you had the presence of bluefish, it would throw it to a different level. Then it became a game of cat and mouse where it was like, how do you get through the bluefish to get to the pogies? And a quick story, I had actually blown my engine this morning. It was a terrible day. I had a 23-foot Seacraft. I grabbed a buddy from college. I'm like, listen, I'm going to catch you your biggest striper ever. He got like a 35-pounder, the first fish of the day, and he was like beside himself. But we were breaking fish off. I had the light tackle with me. We were breaking fish off from other fish in the school, hitting a taut line. And I'm like, we got to go get the live line and rods, the bigger stuff. There's some big fish around. This is my chance to catch my biggest striper ever, maybe crack 50. Let's go. So I went to shoot in. And next thing you know, white smoke coming out of the engine. I call my old man who's holding court at the coffee shop at Pemberton and, doing his thing. And he was pissed. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So I'm like, but Dad, listen, grab the striper gear, grab the live line and rods, bring your buddy, get your blackfin, come get me in, and then let's go right back out. This is insane. So I was showing him the pictures, and when he saw what was going on around us, you had purple water everywhere, bluefish and bass, big ones mixed in. I remember him looking at me after like catching 2 bluefish to 1 nice striper and goes, "All right, kid, you done effing around?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "We got enough baits in the boat. Cut all those in half. I want 3.5-foot leaders, egg sinkers above the swivel." And he's like, "We're going to go." And this was like, he wasn't doing this stuff with electronics. This was all in his mental Rolodex. And he's like, "We're going to go and drift." We had an outgoing tide. We're going to go drift through the gut in the deep channel edges. And we're going to cut bunker down on the bottom. We're going to get below the bluefish and watch what happens. Brian, Benny, I think it was like 26 35 to 40-pound stripers. Every drift, you were just catching them one after another. Then all of a sudden, I'm like, "Oh, I think I got a bluefish." He's like, "All right, you guys want to go have breakfast?" And I'm like, "You want to stop this?" He's like, "Yeah, it's going to be all bluefish, man." He's like, "The tide died. It's over." And I'm like, he's like, "Watch, make one more drift." We tripled up on bluefish. And it was funny because I'll never forget this. You always just say, you'll never know as much of, I've forgotten more than you'll ever know, and I was like, why are we going to cut these beautiful baits in half? And it was like the light bulb went off, and it was so funny. He basically kind of, predicted what was going to happen. Never would have thought that way. And it was one thing that, you put in your back pocket and you're like, all right, I get it. So, the dead bait talk kind of brought me back to that, because bluefish can change that dynamic You know, one boat was there, and he was like talking to his buddy, calling a buddy, and he's like, "This is insane! I catch one big bluefish after another. It's like mayhem out here." And he goes, and then there's this one boat pulling up one massive striper after another, and there was the difference between snag and drop, which you could do back then, and what we were doing, which was like, you know, that was one of those things where it's like,
we haven't really seen that in the harbor in many years in the fall.
Yeah.
And then last year,
It happened again?
when I came back from Albie fishing, because I spent the whole month of September here.
Yeah.
I came back the first week of October. It was you know,
Gators,
15
just 15
to
pounders.
20 pound bluefish mayhem on pogie schools with bass underneath them.
That is the cool. Don't you feel like when that's going on, like if you can get a bait down low, there's a fish down there that will blow your mind. You feel like any bite could be that one. It's awesome.
I skunked out tuna fishing. I had a really good trip the day before and tuna fishing, and then we went out the next day and the fish just weren't where they should have been, and we didn't want to seeing a fish. We come back in. These guys are all bumming out because, you know, it was a long day, and I was like, hey guys, I had some lighter tuna spinning setups on the boat. I was like, you guys want to catch some big bluefish and bass? And we stopped on the way back in, and these guys, they talk about, they've been calling me all winter. I had a trip with them the other day out, and all they could talk about was that trip, that tuna trip that turned into a bluefish bass trip on the way back in, because that's what you just described is exactly what we had.
Yeah. That is the most like magical, like
That's an awesome
little
time.
window to catch just right. It's
And it was like that for like a week, and then they were kind of. It
doesn't last long.
I love bluefish. I think the pound for pound is the hottest fighting fish.
Bluefish are fun.
Pound for pound.
Bluefish are fun. They're dangerous.
Oh yeah,
I've seen
I got
I've seen
bit
some
bad last year.
shenanigans.
Yeah.
You know.
I remember there was only bluefish.
So-
I'm older than you guys.
Yeah.
I remember all it was bluefish.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean,
those were
as a
non-existent.
kid, that's what I caught.
Blues.
I mean, I was probably, I don't know, 9, 10 years old when I caught my first striped bass, but I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
I was like the guy on the pier took it and stuck his hand in his mouth. I was like, oh wait, you're gonna get bit, you know?
Yeah, it's funny how cyclical things go. I mean, when I was, you know, I'm about to be 40 the end of this year, and it's like, you know, when I was a kid, I remember so vividly that we went out with my father and we were jigging up some like 30, 35 pound stripers, and he was like beside himself like a kid on Christmas. He was like, there's nice stripers again. This is amazing. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, he's like, oh, there was like, a 10, 15 year period where they weren't around, you know? And my first fish at 2.5 years old was a bluefish. Yeah. And I cried like a little baby when my pogie got bit in half, and I thought that was the catch. And then next thing you know, it comes back chopped in half. And then he explained to me like, no, if you put that out there, you'll catch a. And I caught a bluefish, and then I was happy again. And that's where the sickness began. Yeah. You know, but where do you think we're at in that whole cyclical? There's all this talk. There's all these preventative measures being put in place with the striper regulations that we're on the forefront of, and troubled waters ahead type of.
There's definitely ominous. So be prepared for October, because the hammer, there's going to be a lot of changes coming down from the AMFMC and the feds, and I think that slaughter's going to get moved up, and potentially worse regulations. I mean, there's been talks of potential shutdowns, closures of the month of August. There's been talks of the slot being moved. There's been talks of moratorium, catch and release moratorium. I mean, who knows? I mean, I'm not a fan of losing any access.
And that never ends well. I mean, look at what
never ends. Look at what happened with cod.
Yeah.
There's more cod than ever before, but we can't fish for them now.
There were no pogies for when I was for a stretch of my younger years fishing, and we relied on live lining river herring. And then it was like clockwork. As soon as they shut that down, the pogies came back, and it was like, all right, good. At least we have baits. And then the mackerel population was strengthening. But now it's
and the river herring are back, but you still
17 years ago. I think they took herring off the table.
Once you lose them, you'll never get them
back. And they
said
the same thing like with the pandemic. Oh, it's just going to be a couple weeks. Let's flatten the curve. They said that with river herring, like, let's give it a couple years. And now they're back in numbers.
Oh, they're back in numbers, but we'll still never get to fish river herring again.
It's crazy. So we got to be mindful of that. But where do you think?
So
where do you want to see things go?
So I would love. So right now we're going to rely extremely heavily on the 2015 year class to reach spawning age, and because that's the big year class right now.
That was the last boom.
That was the last boom. And now what we have is that 2015 year class is now 27 to 30 inches, 29 inches.
Hammered right now.
They are getting slaughtered daily.
Yep.
I mean, I see it. I'm out on the water every day. Everyone's keeping their limit. If dad takes 3 kids out, I mean, there's so many of them around right now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And they're all getting wiped off the face of the planet. And unfortunately, the state and the feds are moving way too slow for this. That slot should have been moved up last year.
Okay.
Right? That slot should be preemptively moved ahead. It shouldn't be moved in October to 30 to 34, because next year they're all going to be 30 to 34.
So that's
it needs to be 34 to 40 next year.
You're moving a slot limit, right? With like no in a northerly trend. You're staying with the same year class. So
but that mid-year class right now, that where the slot should be, right? Should be where that year class isn't.
Yeah. That's my point.
That's what I'm saying. Right now, we have that slot exactly on top of that year class that we're relying on to repopulate.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because you're gonna get a much broader range of spawning fish coming in a much wider range of good genetics coming in.
Yeah,
with having all of these fish. And not just relying on solely so many large breeders, because especially right now. And the other thing that we need to look at is, we got to look at release mortality, obviously, because there's more fishermen than ever before. I think the biggest problem with it is people in general, and the fact that we need better education for anglers. I think if the state and the feds put as much education that they do to a hunter safety permit program towards a fishing license, then we wouldn't have an issue. When you go and you get your hunting license, it's all about good sportsmanship and ethics. And unfortunately, we don't look at it that way. When
you don't have that same dynamic.
It's not the same dynamic when you're fishing. Right.
When you start at that point where you have to learn, those fundamentals just to be able to have the what's the word I'm looking for? To have the privilege to
have
participate in that sport and have access to those game animals. Why not do the same thing with fishing?
And I
that's
think,
something that we try to do.
As a fishery, if we could lean heavily on the education part of it, we could reduce the release mortality significantly. Okay. And that has a big part. The other thing that we really need to look at is why we're having these bad spawns is water quality. Right. And the nitrates that are coming into the water, because the egg counts down in the Chesapeake, the egg counts are still as high. It's the fertilization of the eggs that's the issue right now. Okay. So, many factors come into fertilization of eggs, and that has, it's a lot of it is environmental and stuff like that. But a very big factor is water quality. Okay. So if you don't have clean water and too much shit is getting into the water, then then we need to look at that problem and address that problem, because then all that's going to happen is they're just going to take away your right to have access, because it's easier for them to manage.
Yeah.
It's easier for them to say, okay, now you can't go fishing today, than it is to actually
It's
manage
easier
the
to say
problem
no than to
correctly.
find a solution
exactly.
that allows everything to
exactly.
kind of
And that's
continue on the way it should be.
that's why as anglers, I'm going to look right at the camera. You have to get involved, and you have to tell them you want a solution, okay? Not the easy out. Because what's going to happen is they're going to take away your fish, because it's easier for management to take away your fish than it is for them to actually manage correctly.
The On the Water podcast is brought to you by Guidesley. Hey, charter captains, are you tired of pouring all your money and time into all the stuff that comes with running a charter business other than the actual fishing? Guidesley gets it. That's why they created Guidesley. Guidesley is built for guides, and they understand and solve the unique challenges that you face every day. Let Guidesley handle your book of business, from technology to customer management, leaving you to handle the fishing. Become a guide on Guidesley.com and download the Guidesley Pro app today. Focus on what you do best, putting customers on the fish, and leave the rest for Guidesley to handle. All right, so Brian, you were talking, to everybody to get involved. How does one get involved to make a difference?
I mean, recently, the easiest way for you to get involved is to get with someone that actually has a voice in the game. And lately, that's been the American Saltwater Guides Association. They've really been such a good voice for striped bass management, for menhaden management. They're really getting out there. They're getting down to Washington. They're getting involved. They're getting stuff done. Go sign up for them. With those guys, it's very easy to go right on their website. Google the American Saltwater Guides Association. It's not just fishing guides; it's recreational anglers too. Sign up with these guys. They make it much easier to understand. They do synopsises of what exactly is going on, because if you just read some of the paperwork that the feds and the state puts out, it's very difficult to even understand.
They make it difficult on
They make it so difficult on purpose for you to actually know what's going on, that you're like, oh, screw this. I don't want to know anything. I'd rather just it's too much work. So what the Guides Association does, the American Saltwater Guides Association, they look at it, they translate it out into stuff that you can understand.
And get behind
they get behind it. They're going out, boots on the ground, and they're getting stuff done for the fishery.
So this is a recruitment pitch. Strength in numbers, the American Guides Association,
I donate to them too. You can donate.
Yeah. And you can go right on their website and sign up. And what's that entail?
So you just go on the website. You click the link on there for a registration. You put in your information and you sign up. I think it's a very small registration fee, if that.
And they just keep you informed, and they
keep you informed and let you know how to take action. If they need signatures, they send you. You'll be able to do an electronic signature thing.
Nice.
But again, they break it down into layman's terms, everyday stuff that you can understand, and they let you know when the red flags become available. And they rely on a lot of guides to I'm in the state of Mass, so when I see something I don't like, the first thing I do is I send an email over to these guys. Hey, this is going on in the state of Mass. You guys should know this, and they're right on top of it.
That's awesome.
Quickly.
That's awesome. Yeah, strength in numbers. Get active. Get involved. Protect what's yours, guys, and we can all have this and pass it on, hopefully, to our children.
Yeah.
And future anglers in a better state than we left it in. Hopefully,
Yeah, because there's.
It's easier now because they have the Zoom meetings. Because before we have to go to the meetings and they put them at 5:00 in the after, 5:00. Everybody's just getting out of work.
Yeah.
So now you can get on to the Zoom meetings and voice your opinions.
Nice.
Live. You know what I mean?
That's awesome. I mean, that's something that we all have to do better at, because it's easy to put your head in the sand and not do anything and then complain about things after the
Yeah,
fact.
I mean, we all want to be able to have access to these fish. And we all want to, unfortunately, from what I found, management just doesn't quite understand and grasp. They think they think they're back in the 70s or the 80s the way they're thinking. I had a management person tell me the other day, I mentioned, well, what about, moving that slot up a little higher? Well, we kept that slot lower so people could get at fish. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not the best for the fish, and the best. It isn't quite the best for the everyday angler. But I bet you, if you polled, and I said this too in a federal meeting, I bet you if you polled people that they would rather catch lots of fish and release lots of fish and have a really good day out on the water, either from shore or from boat, rather than keeping one fish. And you know what he told me? I don't think they would. I don't think that. And I was like, and I said right in the meeting, I said, maybe that just shows how out of touch you are.
Yeah.
Because when you have management that has that mindset and thinking, I mean, it's just not
reality.
It's just not reality. I think the average angler, I mean, especially me, I mean, I know for me and I know for my customers, they'd rather go out and have fishing really, really, really good.
Yeah.
Then
struggle to catch one fish that they can keep and go home with their one fish.
Exactly.
And I caught one fish today and I kept it instead of, I'd rather release 100. And,
yeah.
And if you want to take one for the table legally, by all means.
And that's how I feel. Again, I'm not against any restriction. I want to be able to retain fish.
Yeah.
I like to eat fish. Yeah. But
you were just talking the other day. You might go all. You were thinking about it, but people want to take a fish home.
The problem is, then what happens? Like I got hooked a fish the other day, and it was a slot.
Yeah.
And what about
to the crabs?
You're gonna feed it to the crabs. I got hooked a big fish now, or I can't revive a big fish on one of my trophy trips. I'm feeding it to the crabs right now. Where make a couple trophy tags out there for people that have to purchase trophy tags, maybe, so that maybe if I gut hook a trophy fish, rather than feeding it to the crabs, I can have an option. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's easier for them to manage it, the way how they're managing it now. Yeah. And easy shouldn't be the way. I mean, we should be managing
for sustainability.
Exactly.
And with a forward outlook, it looks like everything is like, the thing that drives me crazy is a lot of it is reactionary instead of proactive.
Nothing.
And I've never seen a conscious effort to shift to being proactive. And we've never had more science. We've never had more technology. All these things that should make that easier, have never come into play. And I just scratch my head and say, why? And you're right. It's taking the easy route.
Yep.
Instead of the harder route to do better.
And a lot of the people that are actually at the top are people that come in with an administration, and they may have an agenda.
Yeah.
Okay. They're not someone that's been working the science for a long time. So you got to, again, if you're not getting results from fisheries management, then the people that put the heads of fisheries management in place, don't vote for them.
Yeah.
I'm telling people that right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be on the agenda. If you're watching this podcast, you're an avid angler and an avid fisherman, most likely, and you really do give a shit. So make it known that you give a shit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's all great advice. And I think, information is power, and that's just, super helpful stuff, Brian. So thank you. Guys, an awesome time getting together always with both of you. We've had some fun times on the water, some funny stuff
I think
happened.
you almost broke your arm the last time we were out.
I did almost break my arm the last time. I think
let's not talk about that one.
Yeah, Chris Megan decided to ram my boat, and I put my arm in the way, and it almost snapped. But we got through that one. But always good times getting together. Yeah. Great insights into striper fishing, guys. Two of the best guides in Boston Harbor, hands down, right here. Brian, how does somebody get in touch with you?
you could Google Captain Brian Coombs or Google Get Tight Sport Fishing. You can reach me directly through my website, www.gettightsportfishing.com. I'm on Instagram as Get Tight Sport Fishing. And you can find me on Facebook as well. Awesome. Vinny?
I'm on the Guidesley program. So you look on the Guidesley
download the
website.
Guidesley app. You can find Vinny and Stormbuster Charters, which is his outfit on that. And as far as following him along on social and getting to his website, how do we do that?
Instagram, Stormbuster77 is Instagram. I am on Facebook, but Guidesley is my top
Nice.
my website.
Awesome.
Checking out my calendar and all the
They make it
different trips
super
I
easy
have.
for you. So download that Guidesley app, guys. Get connected with the best in the business like these guys. And thanks for listening to the On the Water podcast. I'm Anthony DeCicci signing off. We got Vinny Simeone from Stormbuster Charters and Brian Coombs from Get Tight Sport Fishing.
Thank you guys for having us.
Yeah, that was fun.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.